Get out! Those two words hit harder than the winter wind outside. The room went silent, forks frozen midair, Christmas lights flickering like they too were unsure how to react. My father's voice had always carried authority, but tonight it sliced through me like glass. I felt the weight of every eye at the dinner table, waiting for me to respond, waiting for me to crumble. "You're a parasite, Evie," he said, leaning back in his chair with that smug calmness that comes before cruelty. "You've leeched off us long enough." My hand trembled around my wine glass, and I barely managed to set it down before it shattered. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming. For a heartbeat, I thought it was some twisted joke. My father had always loved his cruel humor, but when my mother, Denise, looked down and started slicing her turkey again as if nothing was wrong, I realized this wasn't a joke. "Dad," I whispered, feeling my throat tighten. "What are you talking about?" He snorted, waving his fork toward me like a judge passing sentence. "Don't act innocent. You've been living here rent-free, eating our food, using our heat, while your mother and I bust our backs keeping this house running." My jaw dropped. For months, I had been the one paying their utility bills, their groceries, even the insurance premiums after Mom lost her job. Every paycheck I'd earned as a graphic designer went into this house. My name was on every account, my savings slowly bleeding out while they pretended to be victims of circumstance. And now, sitting in front of our extended family, he was painting me as the villain. "That's not true," I said, but my voice was too soft. "Oh, please," he interrupted. "The world doesn't revolve around you. Maybe it's time you grew up and took care of yourself for once." Laughter rippled across the table from my cousins. My aunt whispered something to her husband, and I caught the word lazy. My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, to pull out the receipts I had hidden upstairs showing the thousands I'd spent keeping this house running. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Facts never mattered when my father decided on a story. The candles flickered as I looked at my mother for support, but she just sighed. "Your father's right, Evie. You've become comfortable here. Maybe too comfortable." My heart broke a little more at her tone, cold, rehearsed, as if she'd been waiting to deliver that line. "I pay for everything," I whispered, but no one heard. Or maybe they just didn't care. "Maybe she should stay with that friend of hers," my uncle said with a grin. "What's her name again? Drew?" The table chuckled. I stood, my legs shaking. "You want me gone?" "Fine." My father's smirk widened. "Good. The sooner the better." For a second, the silence that followed was so heavy I could hear the clock ticking above the fireplace. Then, with deliberate calm, I picked up my plate, scraped the uneaten food into the trash, and set the plate in the sink. The simple clink of porcelain felt final. "Merry Christmas," I said quietly, and walked out. Outside, the night was cold enough to burn. Snow crunched under my boots as I crossed the driveway to my car, the sound of muffled laughter still leaking from the house behind me. My breath fogged in the air as I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I stared at the house, the glowing windows, the silhouettes moving inside, and realized for the first time that I didn't belong there anymore. I started the engine, the familiar hum grounding me as tears blurred the world. "You're fine," I told myself. "You're fine." But my voice cracked on the second word. By the time I reached Drew's apartment, my tears had dried into salt trails. Drew opened the door in pajamas, her dark curls tied in a messy bun. "Evie," she said, surprised. "It's Christmas." "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Merry Christmas. Can I crash here for a bit?" She didn't ask questions, just stepped aside and opened her arms. I collapsed into her hug, trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. We stayed like that for a long time, the quiet broken only by the hum of her heater. "What happened?" she asked finally. I took a deep breath. My dad called me a parasite. Told me to leave. Her expression hardened. "He what?" I nodded, pulling my phone from my pocket. "I've been paying their bills for months, Drew. Groceries, utilities, insurance, you name it. And tonight he acted like I've been freeloading." She stared at me, speechless. I knew they were manipulative, but this... This is evil. I spent the night on her couch, wide awake, replaying the scene over and over in my head. Every word, every snicker, every smug glance. By morning, anger replaced shock. I opened my laptop and began pulling up account statements. Electricity bill paid by me. Internet, my name. Insurance charged to my card. Every line item was proof that I wasn't the parasite. I was the provider. And yet, in their narrative, I was the villain. My phone buzzed mid-morning. A text from my mother. We didn't mean what we said. Come home and we'll talk. I stared at it for a long moment before replying, I'm done being your bank account. Then I blocked her number. Over the next few days, I started disentangling myself from their financial web. I called the power company, the phone carrier, the insurance provider, each call like cutting another invisible chain. One representative laughed when I explained that I was removing myself from my parents' accounts voluntarily. Most people don't want to stop paying their parents' bills, she said. Most people's parents don't call them parasites, I replied. She went quiet after that. By the third day, the silence from home had turned into a storm of rumors. My cousin texted, Heard you abandoned your parents during the holidays. That true? Another message followed. Aunt Denise said you stole money from them. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. Lies spread faster than truth, especially in families that thrive on drama. Drew found me pacing in the kitchen that night. They're trying to control the story, she said calmly. Let them. People who matter will know the truth. It's not that simple, I said. They've already made me the villain. Then rewrite the story, she said simply. Start with your own. Her words stuck with me. That night I opened a new bank account, one they couldn't touch, and transferred every dollar from the old one. My entire financial life, rebuilt in a few clicks. It felt strange, liberating even, to know I finally owned something completely mine. But freedom also came with fear. My savings were almost gone after months of supporting them. I had enough for maybe 2 months of rent and groceries. The rest would depend on how quickly I could rebuild. Drew noticed the worry on my face. You'll figure it out, she said. You always do. I wanted to believe her. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed again, this time from my sister Tessa. Dad's furious. Says you cut the power. Mom's crying. Everyone's saying you've lost it. I typed a reply, then deleted it. There was no point explaining that I hadn't cut the power. They had lost it when I stopped paying the bills. Still, guilt prickled beneath my skin. It always did. I opened my budgeting spreadsheet, double-checking every line like some sort of penance. When Drew came home from her shift, she brought hot cocoa and her golden retriever, Max's dog, Baxter. The big, goofy animal dropped a slobbery tennis ball in my lap. I couldn't help laughing. The sound startled me. It had been days since I'd heard it, but peace didn't last long. The next morning, I received a fraud alert from my new bank. Unsuccessful password reset attempt. Then another. And another. My heart dropped. Only my parents would try something like this. Within minutes, I was on the phone with customer service, verifying my identity and locking down every account. We've flagged your profile for suspicious activity, the agent said. It looks like multiple attempts were made from the same IP address. Can you tell me where from? I asked. The location matches your previous address, she said. My chest tightened. Thank you, I whispered and hung up. When I told Drew, she frowned. They're trying to take what little you have left. They already took everything, I said bitterly. I just didn't see it until now. That night, I made a list of every shared account, subscription, and service I needed to separate completely. It was tedious but necessary. With every canceled autopay and changed password, I felt myself coming back to life. I wasn't the helpless daughter they thought I was. I was done being their safety net. 3 days after Christmas, I was sitting at Drew's kitchen table, finishing another round of security calls, when a loud knock echoed through the apartment. Baxter barked. Drew looked up from the couch. Expecting someone? No, I said slowly, standing. The knocking came again, harder this time. Evie, a voice boomed from the other side of the door. My blood turned to ice. It was my father. "Open this door right now." My pulse roared in my ears. Drew mouthed, "Don't," but I couldn't move. My legs felt rooted to the floor as he pounded again, the sound violent, relentless. "You think you can just walk away?" he shouted. "You destroyed this family." The door shook under his fists. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might faint. Mrs. Perkins, Drew's elderly neighbor, cracked open her door across the hall. "Sir, I've called security," she yelled. "Mind your business, lady," he barked back. Then his voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Evie, open this door or I'll—" A thunderous crash cut him off as he kicked the door, splintering the frame. Drew grabbed my arm. "Call 911. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. "There's a man trying to break in," I told the dispatcher, my voice trembling. "It's my father." The operator's calm voice guided me through the steps, but I could barely hear over the pounding at the door and Drew's frantic whispering. Then, from the hallway, a commanding voice. "Sir, step away from the door immediately." The building security guard's tone was firm, authoritative. My father shouted something incoherent, but the next sound was the wail of sirens approaching outside. I stood frozen, staring at the splintered door, realizing this was no longer a family argument. It was war, and that's when I heard him yell, "You'll regret this, Evie. You think you can survive without us? You're nothing!" The words pierced through the chaos, leaving a silence heavier than any sound. For the first time, I felt something stronger than fear. Resolve. The sirens grew louder, flashing red and blue lights spilling across the apartment walls as if chaos itself had found color. Through the crack of the broken door, I saw my father's face twist from fury to fear as two officers stepped into view. "Sir, put your hands where we can see them," one ordered. Frank hesitated, then raised his arms, muttering under his breath. The older officer, tall and broad-shouldered, glanced at the door's splintered frame. "You tried to kick this in?" "It's my daughter's place," my father said quickly. "She's confused. I was just trying to talk to her." I stood frozen in the hallway until Drew nudged me forward. "That's him," she whispered to the officer. My father's head snapped toward me, eyes burning. "Evie, tell them! Tell them you overreacted." His voice was sharp but coated with desperation. I swallowed hard, forcing words past the lump in my throat. "He tried to break in," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough to carry. "He kicked the door and threatened me." The officer turned back to him. "Sir, you need to calm down. You're coming with us tonight." Frank's face went red. "This is ridiculous." "I'm her father." "And this is private property," the officer replied. "You're under arrest for attempted break-in and destruction of property." As they led him away, I stood in the doorway, watching the man who once tucked me in at night, now shouting at police officers about how ungrateful I was. It didn't feel real until the cruiser door slammed shut. Drew put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, but my voice wouldn't come. Inside, I felt hollow. The kind of emptiness that only comes when you finally understand you've lost something that was already gone long ago. Later, as the officers finished taking statements, one of them, a kind man with graying hair, gave me a card. "If you need to press charges or get a restraining order, call this number. Don't wait." I nodded, staring at the card like it was written in another language. When they left, Drew wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. "He would have hurt you." "I know," I whispered, though the truth stung. Knowing didn't make it hurt less. The next morning, my phone was full of missed calls and messages from unknown numbers. Cousins, aunts, even old family friends, each one demanding to know why I'd had my father arrested. The guilt was suffocating, but beneath it was something stronger, anger. For years, I'd paid their bills, covered their debts, saved their home from foreclosure, and now they were painting me as the villain again. I sat at Drew's kitchen table, scrolling through the messages, each one uglier than the last. "You're heartless. Your mother's crying nonstop. He's your father." But not one of them had ever asked what it cost me to keep that family together. That evening, I drove to the police station to file the official report. Officer Williams, the same one who'd arrested my father, met me at the front desk. "Miss Hart?" he asked, flipping through a folder. "We've got your statement, but we'll need you to sign a few things if you're pressing charges." His tone was gentle but firm. My hands shook as I took the pen. "I just want to make sure he can't come near me again," I said. "That's exactly what this does," he replied, sliding a restraining order request across the counter. Signing my name felt both empowering and terrifying. I wasn't just standing up to my father, I was cutting the last thread of obligation holding me to that house. 2 days later, the real shock came. I stopped by my parents' house with the police escort Officer Williams had arranged so I could collect the rest of my belongings. My hands trembled as the familiar white two-story came into view. It looked smaller than I remembered, colder. Mom opened the door, her face pale and puffy from crying. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. "Your father's ashamed enough." "He should be," I said before I could stop myself. Her lips tightened. "You always did have a cruel streak." Inside, the living room was a battlefield of judgmental silence. Every framed photo on the wall, the birthdays, graduations, vacations, suddenly looked staged, like props in a lie I'd lived too long. "I'm just here to get my things," I said. "The officer will supervise." Upstairs, I found my bedroom half empty. Drawers open, clothes missing, laptop gone from the desk. "Where's my stuff?" I demanded. Mom folded her arms. "Your father sold some of it. We needed the money." My stomach twisted. "You sold my laptop?" "You don't live here anymore," she snapped. "Everything left behind belongs to us." I turned to Officer Williams, who was standing by the door. "I have receipts for everything," I said. "Every single thing in this room was bought with my money." He nodded. "Then you're entitled to it. Do you know where the laptop is now?" "She took it to the pawn shop," I said bitterly. Mom's face reddened. "We needed to pay bills." "You needed to pay for Dad's fishing boat," I shot back. The silence that followed was deafening. At the station, I handed over the receipts and filed a theft report. Officer Williams promised to check local pawn shops, and 2 days later, I got the call. Both my laptop and my camera had been found. They'd pawned them for $300 total. Items worth over $2,000. I felt sick. When I arrived to retrieve them, the officer looked at me sympathetically. "Family can be the hardest kind of thief to face," he said. I didn't answer. My voice would have cracked if I tried. That night, sitting on Drew's couch, I opened my laptop. Everything was still there. My designs, my portfolio, my notes. It felt symbolic, like getting a piece of myself back. But peace never lasted long in my family. A week later, Mom called from a new number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Evie," she began, her voice sweet and trembling. "Can't we just talk?" "About what?" I asked flatly. "You've lied, stolen, and let him try to break into my home." "He was angry," she said quickly. "You pushed him. You embarrassed him in front of everyone. But if you drop the charges, he'll apologize." I laughed, an empty, bitter sound. "Apologize? You think this is about pride?" "We're still your parents," she pressed. "We can start over. You can move back in, we'll forget this ever happened." I froze. "You're not offering forgiveness," I said slowly. "You're bargaining for silence." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "If you keep this up, we'll have to tell people you've been unstable. You know how gossip spreads." That one sentence chilled me more than anything else she'd ever said. She wasn't just manipulative, she was threatening my reputation. "I have proof," I said finally. "Every payment, every bill, every lie. You can tell whatever story you want, but I have the truth." I hung up before she could respond. When I told Drew what happened, she stared at me in disbelief. "She's threatening you now? You need to block her." "I did," I said. "But it doesn't matter. They'll find other ways." Sure enough, the next day, an old family friend messaged me online. "Heard you're taking your parents to court." "That's low, Evie." I didn't reply. Instead, I took screenshots of everything. Every lie, every threat. Evidence in case I ever needed it. Because by now I understood something painful but clear. When people lose control over you, They'll destroy your image to feel powerful again. The following week, I found a small studio apartment, tiny but perfect in its own way. White walls, cracked windows, a kitchen the size of a closet, but it was mine. I signed the lease with trembling hands, barely able to believe I was free. Drew helped me move in, her laughter filling the empty space as we unpacked boxes. "You did it," she said, tossing me a set of new keys. "First step to your new life." I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Yeah," I whispered. "No one can kick me out now." For a while, things were peaceful. I found new freelance clients, rebuilt my savings, and started sleeping through the night again. But the calm cracked when Officer Williams called. "Just a heads up," he said. "Your father's out on bail." My chest tightened. "Is the restraining order active?" "Yes," he said. "If he tries to contact you, call us immediately." That night, I double-checked every lock on my door. Drew stayed on video call until I fell asleep. For days, I lived in quiet tension, waiting for the next shoe to drop. It came the following week, through Tessa, my little sister. She showed up at my door unannounced, bundled in a hoodie, eyes swollen. "I couldn't stay there anymore," she said, voice trembling. "They're saying you turned everyone against them. Dad's angry all the time. Mom cries nonstop." I pulled her into a hug. "You're safe here," I said softly. She clung to me like she hadn't done since she was a child. Over dinner, she told me how things had fallen apart after I left. The power bills unpaid, the mortgage overdue, Dad's fishing boat sold for half its value. "They keep saying you'll come back and fix everything," she said quietly. "But I don't think they believe it anymore." That night, after Tessa fell asleep on my couch, I sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. The version of me who once bent over backward to please my parents was gone. I'd spent years earning their approval, and for what? To be called a parasite, to be robbed, lied to, and blamed for their downfall. The realization settled like calm after a storm. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. Just as I started to breathe again, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "You think you've won? You'll regret humiliating me." My heart stopped. It was him, my father. The text was followed by a picture, taken from outside my building, zoomed in on my apartment window, and that's when I knew he'd found me. When the door closed behind the police officer that day, the silence that filled the apartment was heavy, almost suffocating. I sat on the edge of my couch, staring at the car keys still trembling in my hand, the ones my father had tried to steal from me. It felt like the last string connecting me to that house, that family, that past had finally snapped. I should have felt victorious, relieved even, but instead my chest ached with something that felt like grief for a life that had never really been mine. The months that followed were slow, quiet, and painfully honest. I worked 2 jobs, saved every penny, and built a routine that didn't rely on anyone's approval. Each day started the same way: coffee in silence, a small prayer that the world would stay calm, then hours buried in spreadsheets and designs for my freelance work. I didn't have family dinners or late-night phone calls from a mother asking how I was. I had peace, though, and that was new. But peace is strange when you've spent years surviving chaos. It almost feels like a void. Some nights, I found myself scrolling through old family photos, wondering when exactly the love had turned into control. Maybe it was never love at all, just ownership disguised as care. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming. Months passed, and life started to take a shape that was finally my own. I got promoted at work, moved into a slightly bigger apartment, and started a small side business managing marketing for local boutiques. Drew kept reminding me that I deserved every bit of success coming my way, but part of me still felt like I was waiting for something, or someone, to take it away. Trauma does that. It whispers that joy is temporary, that safety is an illusion. One Saturday morning, I got an envelope in the mail with no return address. My stomach sank before I even opened it. Inside was a short handwritten note from my mother, the kind written by someone who doesn't know how to apologize. "We're sorry things went so far. Your father isn't well. We lost the house. Maybe you could visit? Just once. I sat there for a long time, reading it over and over, tracing the indentations her pen had made in the paper. The same hand that once tucked me into bed had also signed withdrawal slips for money she'd stolen from me. I folded the letter back into the envelope, sealed it again, and tucked it inside a drawer. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Maybe I never would be. Weeks later, I got another message, this time from my younger sister Tessa. She'd been away at college, supported mostly by scholarships and some quiet help from me. "Evie, Mom and Dad are staying with Uncle Ron now," she said over the phone, her voice trembling. "They keep blaming you for everything. But I know the truth. I saw the receipts. I know what you did for us." I didn't realize how much I'd needed to hear that until the tears started falling. Someone finally saw me, not as the family's wallet, not as the problem, but as the person who tried to hold everything together until it broke. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the word family and how fragile it really was. People always say blood is thicker than water, but they never mention that blood can choke you if you keep swallowing it to keep the peace. The following month, Thanksgiving crept up again, almost mocking me with its traditions. Drew insisted on hosting a small dinner at my place. "You deserve to rewrite this holiday," he said, smiling as he carried in a tray of roasted vegetables. Tessa joined us, home from college, quieter but brighter somehow. We laughed, cooked, and shared stories about our chaotic childhood, turning pain into humor the way survivors often do. For the first time in years, I didn't dread the clinking of dinner plates. But even in that warmth, part of me drifted back to my parents, where they were, what they might be saying, whether they missed me or just missed what I provided. Near the end of the night, Tessa slipped an envelope into my hand. "It's from Mom," she said softly. "She told me to give it to you in person." I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was another letter, longer this time. My mother's handwriting wavered across the page. She wrote about losing everything: the house, the savings, the respect of the community. She said my father was drinking again, that he talked about me constantly, that he still called me ungrateful. She ended with, "I know we failed you, but I miss my daughter. Please just call." My throat tightened. The letter smelled faintly like her perfume, the one that used to linger on my pillow when she kissed me goodnight as a child. Memories of her laughter, her cooking, her soft humming while folding laundry. All of it clashed violently with the lies, the theft, the betrayal. I folded the letter carefully, not tearing it, not tossing it. I just placed it back in the envelope and whispered, "I can't go back." Tessa hugged me,